Okay, so we're now at the back of the vehicle. We've got the main hose reel and we've got the main control panel as well. Remember, we have the small little control panel on the side which allows us to start and stop the vacuum pump and also open and close the boom valve. So the main panel itself, then, if we look across the top, we've got the jet pump pressure gauge first, and that's going to tell us what pressure we're running at when we're operating the jet pump. Remember, the gauge is filled with glycerine. Glycerine is there to stop the needle from flickering so we can get an accurate reading. On this newer machine, we've got increase and decrease pressure on the blue buttons. On older machines, it would have been a black manual pressure regulator in the middle. We've also got the dual gauge that tells us whether we're producing vacuum or pressure. Remember, the needle swings to the right for suction, for vacuum, and it swings to the left for pressure. So it's quite important we know which way the needle is going. That's going to establish whether we've got vacuum or pressure on the system. The lever at the end here that you can see, when we push the lever up, it'll reel in. When we push the lever down, it'll reel out. We've got the main emergency stop button. When we press this button, okay, that will basically stop the engine on the vehicle, so any operations will cease immediately when you press the emergency stop button. Good idea to check if the vehicle won't start first thing in the morning that nobody's pushed the button. We've got a gauge drain underneath here which basically drains the condensation that builds up inside the panel and all the pipe work. So if we open this, sometimes we get a little bit of water running out. We can also actually empty this on a blowdown system as well, which we use for blowing the water out the hoses, and if you've got boom jets, we can blow the water out of the boom as well. So we'll close that for now. The control buttons moving from left to right. Jet pump start stop. When we press the button, the red light comes on to tell us that the jet pump's running. Real supply is your next one. When we open this, it opens a solenoid valve to allow water to come through the main hose. Again, when it's open, the red light's on. We can increase and decrease pressure looking at our gauge using the blue buttons. One interesting point is that it'll always default to 0. So if we forgot to decrease the pressure during a jetting operation, and maybe we were running about 100 bar, and we forgot to decrease the pressure, by pressing real supply and jet pump stop, we can stop the operation. When we start again, jet pump start real supply, it'll always default to 0. So you've physically got to press the button to bring the pressure up. Good safety feature. Low water warning light, which is accompanied by an audible sounder, which is in the rear of the hose. Behind the hose reel itself, behind the drum, you've got a sounder unit to tell you when you're low on water. And we've got the vacuum pump start stop button, again red lights on when it's running, and the changeover button. So the changeover button will change it from vacuum, that's the default setting, across to pressure. So we use that when we're emptying the secondary cutout tank, which we talked about a little bit earlier on, and we can demonstrate that for you shortly. So that's the main control panel on the rear of the machine. Obviously, when we're doing a jetting operation, we can leave it where it is, but it is a little bit restrictive. So we can swing the unit out by going to the back of the machine, back of the hose reel, take the cleat pin out the back, that's safely on a chain, and then you can bring the whole hose reel around. So you can jet either away from the vehicle or jet under the vehicle if you need to. You've got this nice bit of movement as well to allow you to manoeuvre during the jetting operation. You've got to remember, once you've finished, to put this back in the appropriate place. Make sure it's properly parked and put the pin back in. Otherwise, that's going to be swinging around all over the place. Okay, brand new hose with a leader hose on there. We'll be checking damage on the hose really every time before we use it. Every time we use the jetted hose, we should be checking for damage. Again, that's blebbing, kinking, skinning and corrosion. And the leader hose is there really to tell you that you're getting close to the end. There's probably about 5 meters of leader hose on there, I would suggest. The 2 valves at the bottom here, starting off with the one on the right hand side, this one, just going to move across. This is the dewatering valve that dewaters the load inside the tank. So we would open this, obviously with the cap off. There's a great big disc screen inside behind the door, and it covers the hose, or covers the pipe that is slightly higher on the right hand side, so no solid materials can get through. It's just going to let the water out. So the dewatering valve is the right valve. That screen doesn't cover the pipe on this side, so this is the unloading valve. So we can unload through this valve, and we can also load through this valve. So this is just the dewatering valve on the right hand side. Left hand side is your loading and unloading valve. No screen. The screen inside the tank doesn't cover this pipe. You can see where the pipe goes onto the rear door. The other pipe is higher, and that's the one that's covered by the screen. So right hand valve just for dewatering. There have been occasions where people have tried to use it for loading, and they're not going to load very much, because all it's doing is forcing the material against the screen. There's no screen on this side. Okay, that's the back end done.